if someone were to ask me, what is my favorite game of all time, then there's only one answer that I can give them. My favorite game of all time is the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And I can say that with relative ease. And there's a lot of evidence that it's my favorite game of all time. I have 2 copies of the game right there, and I have a third copy, a Steam copy, on my machine. So I have a copy that was given to me as a present by my brother. And at that time, my brother came to me and said, "You should try this game. It's amazing. It's really, really good. Oh, the things." He was so excited about it. He was talking to me about the Mages Guild and the Fearsco and the Dark Brotherhood and all the detail in the world. And he also told me about how if you made a friend with an NPC, that they'll give an inheritance to you. And it was those details like that specific details, stuff like that, world building details, that truly made me interested. And it was fun to play my copy of Skyrim while my brother played his copy of Skyrim, and we would discuss the different ways we do the missions. For example, I would finish a mission in one way and he would finish it in the other. I was going to say he was Stormcloak, I was Imperial, but that's not true. We were both fans of the Empire and the Civil War questline, but that is the sort of thing. No different playstyles of Skyrim is the same. And to further that point, Skyrim is an Western computer role-playing game. And you can play it in first person or third person. And third person, actually, this time in the Elder Scrolls, is actually useful. And you can completely play it like you would play any other third person action adventure game. It's actually really useful in combat. And in Skyrim, you've got this system where you've got 2 hands. So in the left hand, you can have a healing spell. In the right hand, you can have a sword. And as you're slashing your enemy, you can heal yourself. Or you can have 2 swords. Or a fireball and a healing. Or 2 fireballs. Or an axe and a sword. And you know what I mean? All different styles of play style. There are all sorts of different ways to play the game. No 2 ways are the same, really. And that is the beauty of open world RPGs like Skyrim. The other evidence that it is my favorite game, not only do I have 3 copies of it, the original copy, the legendary edition with all the DLCs installed, and a Steam copy with at least 1 DLC installed. And you know, if you've seen my channel, you know I make a lot of Skyrim related content. You know, things to do, short little secrets, my Machinima series, Big Bad Wolves, The Tortured, No Third Option. And I like to use Skyrim in my Machinima because the editor, the creation kit, which you do have to download from Steam, but it's free and it's not that really big. If you wanted to, you create your own mods, own quests, and that sort of thing. I'm going to mention about mods later and how they factor into it. And it's probably the easiest engine to use to create Machinima. And I say it's easiest because it's so versatile. There are a lot of things to do, and when you're making Machinima, you need lots of options. So, for example, with the mods I installed, Director's Tools and Puppeteer Master, and with that you can decide on NPCs or the player characters' emotion, such as anger, fear, sadness, whatever. You can decide what the NPC would wear, what armor style, like if they've got iron, gilded, glass, orcish, an armor that you downloaded offline. I should really talk about that mods. And you can give them like behaviors, different actions. You can have drinking, reading, all sorts of things, and you can have different angles. And the console commands are much easier than the ones in Fallout New Vegas, for example. And it's just a very fast way and very easy way, and a very versatile way of making machinima. I think Skyrim is very good for machinima. Up there with Halo and Grand Theft Auto 5. So, it's a shame that not many machinima is made in Skyrim these days. And the game came out in 2011. And while everyone's going crazy about Fallout 4, I myself wanted to play Fallout 4 and I couldn't, and I'll explain why later. Hopefully never. But Skyrim, I think it's been relegated to the position of like a grandfather. And I think it's untrue. It's 4 or 5 years old. It's not really that old. And it's upsetting to me because Skyrim has got a lot of great things about it. A lot of great things. I've always said, when I buy video games for myself, it's because I live in a country called Australia. And in Australia, video games are expensive. And it's not expensive because the shipping costs to take a game from the United States or or from Japan to come to Australia, that's not an expensive bit. The shipping, the taxes, the tariffs, that's not the expensive bit of paying for video games in Australia. Video games are expensive in Australia, in my opinion, because we're gullible enough to pay these high prices. It's got nothing to do with taxes, it's got nothing to do with shipping costs or tariffs or anything like that. It's because we're willing to pay for it, and we do pay for it. So video games are expensive. And I'm saying this now because since they are expensive, we have to choose which ones to get. And I've always chosen video games that will give me bang for my buck. If a video game gives me hours and hours of enjoyment and content at a price at $60, I call it a bargain. But if I get like a racing game or a first-person shooter and that only lasts me 6 hours and I pay $60 for it, I've lost money. In my opinion, I've lost money. And that was not a good purchase. And because video games are expensive, I have to be careful about money, you see. This is the reality of living in Australia. Lucky Americans, lucky Europeans. They get to pay much cheaper prices, but you know what I'm saying. So, even though my first copy of Skyrim was a birthday gift, it truly means something that, you know, the cost of it was at that time was going to equal my enjoyment. Skyrim also suffers the same problem that other Bethesda games suffers from, and that is like crash to desktop or crash to blue screen of death. Doesn't matter when you're playing on a PC or a console, it would crash. It would sometimes crash. But considering that the game has over 1,000 NPCs and a rich, detailed world, it's pretty understandable that you're going to have those bugs like that. But they're not game-breaking bugs. And I have seen objects float in the air, and I've heard reports of people saying dead bodies flinging wildly. That's never happened to me, thankfully. And sometimes, in rare instances, you're unable to finish a quest, and due to an AI problem, or like an NPC who's supposed to ally you is starting to attack you, and you can't, sheath your weapon, and they won't forgive you, and it does some cause problems that some quests are unable to finish. And that's really, really tough. The PC users actually can do a console command can fix that, but console users, they have to reverts to going to an early save to complete a quest. That's really annoying. Thankfully, I haven't had that much of that. I've only had 1 or 2 instances of that happening to me. Which leads me to my next point, is that in Bethesda games, you've got to save often. And you've got to save multiple times. I've heard this, that some players like to explore a dungeon, several dungeons at least, all at once. And they get good loot, lots of money, a fantastic sword, a magical sword, which does 10% fire damage on each hit. Then they die, and they have to go back to an early save, and all their work, all their loot, and all their fantastic flame sword is all gone. And they feel a little bit pissed off. Because, and understandably so, if I worked so hard and everything was gone just because it got killed by some bandit or wolf, I'll be pissed off too. But it's not really the game's fault. You've got to save it all the time. And you can set auto-saves whenever you rest or sleep or go into a new town. So I disagree with people who say that, they get disheartened and they don't want to go back to the game. You got to save it all the time. I know it sounds so condescending, but, it's sort of true. Otherwise, this stuff will keep happening and it'll ruin your enjoyment. And you can get a lot of enjoyment, and there's a lot of customization. All the races are cool. Lots of different armor styles. Lots of different creatures. Heaps of different creatures. From Daedra demons to wolves and wildlife. There's giants and Falmer. Lots of different creatures. Lots of things to kill. Blocking is improved. It's now fun to lift up and block with a shield. The combat is simplistic. Slash with your sword or with an axe, or use staves, or use archery. Very simple stuff. A little bit too simple at times. There's not enough, fancy slashing moves like in Assassin's Creed, like a bit of fencing. So it's just, slash left, slash right, power slash. Not much moveset. Still fun, but still could do with some more. The thing I like about Skyrim, and this is my opinion why it's better than Morrowind or Oblivion, is that it took elements from both Morrowind and Oblivion and it combined it. It took the world building of Morrowind. In Morrowind, I still remember reading the books, in-game books of Morrowind, and I felt entranced because those were proper stories in those in-game books, stories to themselves, and several of them are very hard-hitting. And that was the funnest part of Morrowind, was reading those books and looking at reading the culture of the Dunmer homeland, the Dark Elf homeland, looking at the pottery, looking at the cities they built, all these tiny details about the culture. And Skyrim has that same sort of thing. There's plenty of books, plenty of different architectural styles, lots of details in the objects in the world, like the cooking utensils, different furniture, that sort of thing. Lots of world building in Skyrim. And it also took Oblivion's enhanced combat, because in Morrowind, let's say you have an one-handed skill of about 20. And so in Morrowind, with this one-handed skill, you get your sword and you hit an enemy, and you find out that you're hitting the enemy, but it's not causing any damage. Well, in Morrowind, that 20% in one arm skill will decide whether you actually hit the opponent, not how much damage it does. And I believe they changed that, and they've kept that in Skyrim as well, which I'm glad. And it's a bit more complicated, especially in Morrowind. How much damage you do depends on your skill level, the weapon you're using, the condition, the make of it, whether it's glass or ebony or daedric, something like that. All depends on how much damage you do. And of course, there's perks that raise that, give you abilities to zoom in and slow down time when you're doing archery. Lots of fun stuff. It's very detailed. It really is. The crafting system is incredibly detailed to a point. You have to mine the ore, smelt that ore into ingots. Ingots create armor and weapons. There's a system for alchemy, system for making food, and if you install the Hi-Fi DLC, you can make even greater sense of food. And potion making and enchanting, it's all wonderful there. Lots of crafting. I really like the crafting. I find it simplistic but fun to make. I mean, there's no mini game to like hammer the steel into shape. So I would like to see a lot more depth in that, but it's still pretty much fun. Having said that, Skyrim lasts for 100 hours or more, depending how long you want to explore the game. You do end up to a point where you've done everything in the game. It's just natural. Any video game is like this. I talked about this in my Fallout Shelter thing. But unlike Fallout Shelter, Skyrim has a lot more content. But at the end of it, you would have seen at least 90% of Skyrim and completed most of the quests. So, if you want a new experience, what do? You install mods. Sorry about that quick cut. I had to literally swap my card. So, this is my final point about Skyrim. My favorite game in the world. When I got my first copy of Skyrim, late 2011, Christmas, by my brother, I was doing some renovations in my house. And some rooms in my house weren't finished. So my gaming room was just a wooden floor. And all I had is a single TV. My PlayStation 3 and my copy of Skyrim. And even though in that sparse environment, I felt like me and my brother would say this to each other, that it felt like it wasn't a game, it was a world that we ventured into. Through the television screen, we went and we experienced this world, that it wasn't truly a game, it was a culture, it was a world that we could explore. And, I was playing and I was doing the quest line, I think the Winterhold College quest line. And the main quest line and the other things. And might I just say that, just for a quick tangent, I just want to mention that the controls for the console versions of Skyrim are very intuitive. And controls for the PC are very intuitive, so it's well done on their part. Some people may complain that it's more of a console game, that it feels like a console version when they're playing on the PC, but I think it works kind of well. And you can download Sky UI and all sorts of mods to fix that on the PC version. But back to my main point. Even though I was playing in a room that was pretty sparse, I enjoyed myself. And I forgot the world. And, I was playing on, floorboards, basically floorboards. Yes, my house is eventually finished. We got that room finished. That was a long time ago. But during that time, I forgot about that, my room was sparse, and I was just I was enraptured, that is a good verb to use, enraptured by Skyrim. And out of all the games in the Elder Scrolls series. It does the combat right. It does the world building right. It does most things right. It is a near perfect game, in my opinion. I've got 3 copies of the game. I constantly make content for Skyrim, like Let's Plays and Machinima. And I know that I can always go back to it. Even 20 years down the line, I can always go back to Skyrim and still enjoy myself. And the greatest thing is that it's $30 now. So the price has come down since the last 4 or 5 years. And it will continue to fall. And if you see a copy of Skyrim in the $9 bargain bin at your local retailer, get it. It's worth 10 times that. It truly is. That's in my opinion, in my honest opinion, I'm being as truthful as I can. It's worth $90 for a game. It's going to give you hours of content. And if you've got the PC version, you can have even more hours of content with mods. And you can still enjoy yourself. You can enjoy the combat. You can enjoy the world. Some gameplay elements are lacking. Like the bosses, they're a little bit disappointing. But you will still enjoy the world. You will still enjoy the gameplay. You will still enjoy yourself. And I could talk about Skyrim forever. I really could. But I've got to get some sleep at some point. It's just an amazing game. It's captured my attention like no other. I mean, look, this is a craft that I sell in Australia locally, and it is a tablet cover for a Samsung case, for a case for a Samsung tablet, 10-inch. And this is based on augmented thinning, which is an actual item you can get in the game. And if a game excites you enough, and you're willing to create stuff like that, fan art. If you're playing a game and you're excited to create fan art, and you want to create fan art, then that is a sign of a good game, isn't it? It's a sign that it is one of your favourite games. Skyrim is my favourite game in the world, and it probably won't be beaten until Elder Scrolls 6. I'm saying that. I played Fallout 4 with just a little bit, but as much as a big fan of Fallout, and I am a big fan of Fallout, I still prefer Elder Scrolls, and I still prefer Skyrim other than any other game. I hope I've explained myself. But I do highly recommend Skyrim. If you see it, go get it. It's well worth the money. Much more worth the money than any FPS or racing game ever would. Because it's got everything. And you will enjoy yourself, I promise. Care to disagree with me? What is your favourite game? Please tell me in your comments or make a video and share it. And let's keep the discussion. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.